Very good morning, everybody. I and Louise will share the background as well as the objective and what have been done by Red Meat and Cattle Partnership since the beginning until now. And I would like to start with the easiest part of this, which is explaining the background as well as the objective and function of the cattle partnership. So in short, the history of cattle and red meat partnership dates back to July 2013 when the two leaders, then Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd and Indonesian President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, announced the Indonesia-Australia Partnership on Food Security in Red Meat and Cattle Sector in Bogor, West Java. It was announced with an associated 60 million assistance packages or package fund provided by the Australian government. So then the two leaders shared their long vision. That is, if Indonesia and Australia could synergize the potentials and strengths in this particular industry, then we could be mutually beneficial from the improved what's so-called the joint competitiveness, as well as the improved prospect of the long-term trade and investment. So not only trade, but also investment as part of a globally competitive supply chains in this particular sector. So the partnerships underlines investment. And what kind of investment we are talking about here? We are talking about a long-term investment first, and we are not talking only about a one-way investment like Australian investors investing in Indonesia, or the other way around, Indonesian investing in Australian market. What we are talking about is more than that, which is cross-border investment, where not only we expect Australian investment in Indonesia and Indonesian investment in Australia, but a joint venture between Indonesian and Australian industry investing in other countries, serving the global market, more particularly the Southeast Asia market. That's why the partnerships on the Indonesian side report to chairman of Indonesia Investment Coordinating Board as a leading minister from Indonesian side, whereas from the Australian side, the partnership report to the Minister of Agriculture and Water Resources. Why investment? First, because in terms of figure, realized investment figure in Indonesia in the last 5 years in this particular industry, consisting of, in general, production as well as processing, including abattoir, is very low. It's only about $75 million in the last 5 years. Secondly, if we look at the whole supply chain, consisting of starting from production, processing, distribution, and consumption, we have seen a lot of problems, issues, challenges. And we believe that investment can be a key solution to addressing these problems along the supply chains. For example, on the production side, we have a serious problem with low cattle population, for example, and with relatively poor production practices by smallholders. On the processing side, for example, we have issues in terms of quality of our abattoir. In addition to that, the number of modern abattoirs in Indonesia is very, very limited. On the logistic and distribution, the story is about inefficiencies there. We have relatively poor infrastructure in handling cattle, for example, at the port. We only have so far one dedicated vessel to transport cattle, and so on and so on. On the consumption side, for example, we have issue with the low per capita consumption, which is now more or less 2.6 kilogram per capita per year. And in addition to that, we also have problem with relatively high retail beef price. So cattle partnership basically was established to address these issues with the ultimate objectives, among other things, the increase in cattle population in Indonesia, much improved production practices, the increase in per capita consumption, and more affordable price to consumers. So certainly this partnership provide mutual benefits to both sides from working together, because we have been for long have a very good relationship in this, especially trading between Indonesia and Australia. And over time, both countries have built on commercial advantage, namely that Australian is believed to be more effective in producing and breeding cattle, while Indonesian side is more effective in feedlotting cattle and processing them. And because of that, we would like to learn more, for example, from the Australian industry on how to have a much efficient cattle breeding in Indonesia, and so on and so on. Next, the objective of this red meat and cattle partnership is very straightforward, but basically this partnership is an industry government body, because the membership consisting of representatives from the government agencies as well as from the industry. And its task is to provide strategic advice and recommendation to both leaders through respective leading ministers on priority areas. And since the beginning, we have decided that we will have 3 priority areas, which is first, production, or more particularly breeding, secondly, processing, and third, logistic and transportation. The membership from the Indonesian side consists of a representative from the investment board, and I'm representing the investment board, a representative from the Ministry of Trade. We have a Director General for Livestock and Animal Husbandry as a member, a representative from the Ministry of Trade. I should have said Ministry of Agriculture. We have a Director General for Livestock and Animal Husbandry. From the Ministry of Trade, we have Director General of International Trade, And from the Ministry of State-Owned Enterprise, we also have a deputy minister as a member. We also have a deputy coordinating minister of economic affairs as our members. From the industry side, we also have a representative from Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who is now here, and also from the association and from individual companies. So basically, this membership is a high-profile membership on both sides, and that's why partnership can be seen also as a high-profile dialogue platform. As I mentioned before, that the objectives are very straightforward, which is first to support the Indonesia's food security by improving the long-term sustainability, productivity, and competitiveness of these industries. And Indonesia defines food security as a condition in which the demand for food and nutrition in terms of quality, safety, diversity, and affordability is met sustainably and productively. The second objective is to strengthen Indonesia-Australia bilateral business, investment, and trade, and to support closer engagement with the red meat and cattle sector. The third objective is to support bilateral exchange of expertise, capacity building, and technical assistance. And the fourth objective is to build and improve understanding between government and industry, government and government agencies between the two countries, and industry to industry between the two countries. It is basically a dialogue platform. Since the beginning, we have agreed that in order to improve the profile and credibility with the industry and government, we need to have early harvest or quick wins. And we expect that the quick wins or early harvest can come from the three priority areas, which is breeding, processing, and logistic and transportation. On breeding, for example, we are now working on piloting. Basically, the objective is to identify the economically feasible investment model of cattle breeding in Indonesia, and the result is expected to improve the attractiveness of this industry to investors. A particular emphasis was also placed on the skill development and investment. So in addition to the three focus or priority areas, we also have this cross-sector program, which is skill development and capacity building program, which is now working relatively very well and will be elaborated later on. And lastly, as of October this year, approximately 17.5 Australian million had been expended on projects in the priority areas of development, which are breeding, processing, and logistic, and one cross-sector program, which is skill development and investment. I think I should stop here to give opportunity to the Australian co-chair to elaborate more on what we have been doing so far. I thank you very much.
Morning all, and thank you, Himawan, for giving us a good introduction on the partnership. And I think the key word for us in the partnership is about mutual benefit. As Himawan outlined, it's really around 2013 and the commitment by the highest levels in Indonesia and Australia to improve our relationship, improve our industry-to-industry contact, improve our industry-to-government contact and government-to-government. So that is one of the main aims of the partnership. in the red meat and cattle industry. As Pak Himawan has said, as October of this year, we've spent about 17.5 million on various projects. And my idea today is just to give you a bit of a snapshot on some of those projects. And of course, we're here afterwards to talk on any detail that you might be interested in. But the key issue in our mind, as Pak Himawan has told you today, is about improving and developing the competitiveness, the efficiency and the sustainability both of the Australian industry, but of course the Indonesian industry and the components along that logistic supply chain. I'll now run through some of the projects which we're currently undertaking. So, just so you're aware, there is a couple of projects, particularly on early sort of what we're calling early harvest projects, and they were the East Kalimantan Breeder Program, which is run by the Northern Territory Government and by Mr. Greg Smith, who's the on-ground manager and on the smallholder breeding programs. The project is with the support of the local dinas, and Greg's helping to manage nearly 2,000 Australian heifers in 50 different groups, so quite a complex and difficult project. The project, from the point of view of the support, the financial support, finishes in March 2018. Our understanding that obviously there's been various issues and challenges along the way, and we'll make sure that that's documented and understood, because part of the program is about how we're able to provide evidence about what is a good way of breeding in smallholder programs, and also what's not working in smallholder programs. The other one I wanted to highlight was the Indonesian Supply Chain and Logistics Study. Again, this project is run by KPMG, and it's an investment by the partnership of around $300,000. It's to identify and document, quantify costs and constraints along the Indonesian and the Australian supply chain, with the idea of mapping the existing and future ports, with the idea then of making sure that people understand what the challenges are and what needs to be done, particularly in those two ports of Lampung and East Nusa Tenggara, as an idea of what sort of investment needs to be done, or what sort of investment needs to be put into those sorts of ports in the future. So it's really about what the challenges are and what the investment should be. That particular project is due for completion in mid-2018. The current projects that are now underway, so beef consumption and preference trends in Indonesia. This is a study that's been run by Ernst & Young and Sweeney, and it's an investment by the partnership of about $350,000. It's really better understanding the beef consumption and preference trends in Indonesia, with the idea about how that preference is changing, and how, of course, the information is how then we might need to manage and change and influence as part of our marketing into Indonesia into the future. So it's really about changing dynamics in the Indonesian consumer, comparison of the beef with other protein sources, and the supply and demand factors that are influencing the purchasing decision. Again, this one is due for completion in mid-2018. Another one we just wanted to highlight too was a feasibility study for the beef processing bonded zones, and that is a partner. This project's run by Pro and Associates. It's an investment by the partnership of about $175,000. It's aimed at informing the Indonesian government about the feasibility of establishing beef processing bonded zones in Indonesia. Again, this one's expecting to be finalised in mid-2018. So there's some of the existing projects that look like they're almost finalised, particularly around early to mid-2018. And then there's a couple of key partnership flagship projects which I know Pak Himawan touched on, which I just want to go through very quickly. This is a snapshot, and again, happy to talk to you about in detail either through the panel process or afterwards. So the skills development program is a priority area for the partnership. This skills development is really about supporting closer engagement in the sector through the bilateral exchange of expertise and capacity building. So really it's aimed to make sure there's an industry-government exchange and improve our relationships in various areas. To date, we've spent $5.3 million on that, and we've made a further commitment to spend $1 million over the next couple of per year over the next couple of years. We have we've worked in the monitoring and evaluation of the particular projects, the particular skills development and training over the last couple of years, and we've modified that training. So the training going forward slightly modified, and there's more in-country training for Indonesian people that are with a leading university, which is around making sure there's in-country training, not just in Australia, in-country training. So it'll be a bit of both. And there's also, we've revamped the policy development training for the red meat and cattle sector, and that's really about allowing senior Indonesian government officials to come out to Australia for a 3-week training course, which is really about how Australia does our policy settings, and how that's evidence-based policy settings, and how that helps or hinders the particular industry, which is the cattle and red meat industry. The other one we wanted to highlight today is a significant one. It's been run for some time, and it's run by the Northern Territory Cattle Association, and this is where we basically have a skills development project where we've got Indonesian students who come out and learn about animal husbandry, production, rangeland management and welfare issues within Australia. The course is 1 week in Indonesia, 2.5 weeks in the research station in Alice Springs, and 6 weeks placement on a cattle farm. That's been running for some time and will continue to do that. The next course commences in early 2018. But we've also wanted to make sure that we've got an exchange program back into Indonesia as well as part of that revamped program. The last one, probably one of the most important for Indonesia and the partnership, is the Indonesian-Australian Commercial Cattle Breeding Program. This is the largest project. We've invested $9 million over 3 years, so 2016 to 2019. Which aims to develop various models for sustainable commercial scale beef production in Indonesia. It pilots a range of different breeding systems in Indonesia and partners with commercial sustainable approaches that will be upscaled to facilitate investment. So Park Himawan was very keen on making sure that we looked at what's possible with regards to investment and innovation for the expansion of the cattle breeding in Indonesia. There's 8 sites across Indonesia, ranging from smallholder cooperatives right through to cattle under palm and semi-intensive grazing. There is a speaker. Dick's going to talk about that particular program in a bit more detail after me. But just in conclusion, they're the main projects that the partnership is undertaking over the next forward years. But it will continue to operate until 2021. But again, happy to have questions and conversations as part of the panel. So thank you.